Would everybody mute their, that way we can cut back on the feedback? Thank you. Good evening. This is a meeting of the Wilmette Plan Commission and of the Plan Commission sitting as a special zoning committee. Mr. Adler, would you please call the roll?
Ms. DeGrino.
Here.
Ms. Gamey.
Here.
Mr. Head.
Here.
Mr. Schwab. Mr. Shepherd.
Here.
Mr. Taylor.
Here.
Chairman Bradford.
Chairman is here. This meeting is being conducted remotely via Microsoft Teams. For those watching this video in the future, the state of Illinois is currently under a stay-at-home order issued by Governor J.B. Pritzker due to the coronavirus global pandemic. As a result, all in-person governmental meetings have been canceled. However, the Open Meetings Act now permits electronic meetings of governmental bodies like the Plan Commission, and this evening we are conducting our business in compliance with state law. This meeting is being broadcast live on our local cable access channel 6. It is also being broadcast on the internet on YouTube Live, and the URL for that is www.youtube.com/user/Village of Wilmette/live. To participate in the meeting, you can join through Microsoft Teams. Visit the village's website at www.wilmette.com and find the calendar event for the Plan Commission meeting. There is a link there for you to join the meeting. You will also find the meeting agenda and case reports under the calendar. Alternatively, you can view the meeting on channel 6 or on YouTube and call into the meeting, allowing you to listen and speak using your telephone. The telephone number is 872-239-8225. Tonight's meeting code is 179-426-898#. You may also submit your comments through YouTube Live. A member of the village staff will read your comments to the Plan Commission. All comments to the Plan Commission will be recorded in the meeting minutes, as we typically do. For our meeting guests joining by team, when you are not speaking, please keep your device muted to minimize audio feedback and disruption to the proceedings, and your video turned off so the commission members can be seen. For those of you who are new to our proceedings, the purpose of the commission is to hear evidence on applications for subdivisions, consolidation, plan unit development special uses, annexation, and other land use-related items as requested by the village board. Based on the evidence we hear this evening, we will make a recommendation to the village board of trustees as to whether the applicant that has come before us should be granted or denied. The Village Board of Trustees will consider the recommendations we make this evening at the next regularly scheduled meeting on December 8th, 2020. Our recommendations to the board are advisory only. The Village Board has the say on all applications and will make its own determination as to whether to grant or deny them. The Village Board is not legally bound by our recommendations. Let's see, the first order of business on our agenda this evening is approval of the meeting minutes from our, is this correct, John? February 4th meeting? What are the meeting minutes we're approving here?
Can't hear you, John.
John, you're muted.
Thank you. October 5th and October 6th.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I second.
This is
Are
for the
there
October. Sorry.
Are there any corrections or additions? Mr. Adler, you had forwarded on one comment that Commissioner Jagrino had
Commissioner
regarding
Shepard.
the October 6th meeting.
Yes, Commissioner Shepard, it was on the third page, third paragraph. I did make a change. He pointed out that my statement about the impact of online shopping was incorrectly written there, and I corrected it.
Okay. Are there any other additions or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Chairman Bradford, I do have to call the roll because this is a remote meeting.
Okay, very good.
Yep. Ms. DeGrino,
Yes.
Ms. Gamey,
Here.
Mr. Head,
Yes.
Mr. Shepard,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Chairman Bradford.
And the chair votes aye, so the meeting minutes are approved.
Great.
This meeting is a legal proceeding and all testimony tonight must be given under oath. If you are here and planning to testify tonight, I would ask you that you raise your right hand at this time and be sworn. Do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth in testimony you're about to give? If so, please say I do.
I do.
Great. You're all
I do.
duly sworn.
I do.
Mr. Adler, would you call the first case of the evening, please?
First case is case number 2020 P3. It's a request for tentative plat approval for a two-lot subdivision at 2133 Greenwood Avenue. Those of you who've been on the Plan Commission for a couple of years, this will look familiar because this was before you in 2018. The owner of the property at that time did not come forward for final approval, so the tentative approval expired. The one change between 2018 and now is that the owner of the property found a buyer who does want to save the home on the west side of the property, and that individual who is the applicant in the subdivision today received the necessary variations from the village board to leave the existing house and then have a new house developed on the east lot. And that concludes my remarks.
Is there anybody from the applicant present who wishes to speak?
Yes, my name is Mike Murdoch, and I apologize that I don't have the video feed. I had a problem, but I trust you can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. John, thank you for that introduction, and Chairman Bradford and Plan Commission members. I certainly believe and hope this is a very straightforward case. As John had mentioned, this subdivision was approved in 2018, I believe, and the only substantive difference is the village has granted zoning relief such that I can preserve the house on the west side of the lot. So currently the garage is on the east lot and the house is on the west lot. The garage will be removed, and the resulting subdivision will allow for two 50-foot wide lots that are each approximately 6,097.5 square feet. As you know, the minimum requirements are 50 feet in width and 6,000 square feet of area. The requirement is that the lots are consistent with the density and existing pattern of development in the surrounding neighborhood. And I believe the immediate neighborhood is approximately just under 500 homes. And over 400 of those homes all have 50-foot wide lots. A smaller portion, I think a little bit less than 200, are about the same size as these two lots. And that's simply because the way that Kenilworth Gardens was laid out, Greenwood and Thornwood are narrower lots. I think everybody's familiar. The Chestnut is much deeper, but even Elmwood, Kenilworth, and Beechwood are deeper as well. But again, I believe that this subdivision does meet all the requirements. It was tentatively granted 2 years ago, and I request approval of the subdivision. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions from the applicant? Is there anybody else wishing to speak on this matter? Hearing none, we need a motion to get this before us.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Adler, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. DeGrino,
Yes.
Ms. Gamey,
Yes.
Mr. Head,
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Chairman Bradford.
Chair votes aye. That's an affirmative recommendation. It goes to the village board on December 8th. You may want to attend that meeting in case they have any questions. It's a fairly straightforward case. I doubt that they will, but it's a good idea for some insurance.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Adler, would you call the next case, please?
The next case is case 2020 P 01 and 2020 SZC 02. What we will be doing is discussing these at the same time because obviously they're related. As Chairman Bradford mentioned at the beginning, for the text amendment, the Plan Commission sits as what's known as a special zoning committee. For the annexation, they sit as the Plan Commission. Again, in the presentation from the applicant, questions from the commissioners, and comments that are made from the public, we will discuss both of these requests at the same time. When it comes to vote, we will separate the vote. The annexation would be voted upon first, and then the request for the map amendment second. The first part of the request, which is the annexation request, is a request to annex the north portions of 56 Indian Hill and 39 Locust. And just because I know there's been some confusion, I am going to pull up, if I can. 1 second.
Yeah, I'll be back in a minute.
I don't know if everybody could see the
Yes.
the aerial. Well, what this shows you here is where it says property proposed to be annexed. That's north of the current Wilmette boundary line, that is this area over here in red is the north portion of 39 Locust, and the yellow portion is the north portion of 56 Indian Hill. 56 Indian Hill is developed with a single family home. That home is entirely falls in the village of Wilmette. Again, there's a north portion of that which then abuts Indian Hill Road, which is a private road, which is in the county. The request is to annex that piece of land. And for 39 Locust, again, the red is on south of the line is in Wilmette. The north is in Cook County. It's occupied as one lot with one house, with that house going over the municipal boundary. The applicant is asking that the north portion of the 6 Indian Hill be rezoned to R1C, which is the zoning of the south portion of that property currently. The portion 56 Indian Hill in Wilmette currently is R1C. And then the applicant, as it relates to Locust property, is not asking for the north portion to be rezoned. The south portion exists in Wilmette in that same R1C zoning district. They're not asking for that north portion to be rezoned. That would be brought into the village as R, as all annexed property is. So again, the annexations are the areas north of the blue line, and the map amendment rezoning is the portion of 56 Indian Hill that would be annexed in. When we annex in as R, and they're asking for it to be rezoned to R1C to match the property to to the south, the zoning of the property to the south.
Is there anyone from the applicant here this evening who wants to speak?
Yes, good evening, Chairman Bradford, members of the Plan Commission. My name is Christopher Canning, and I represent the applicant Beach Club 100 LLC. With me tonight is Dr. Jim Fox, the managing member of the applicant. May I proceed?
Please proceed, Mr. Canning.
Dr. Fox grew up in Wilmette, attended school in Wilmette, has owned several homes in Wilmette, and spent part of the 35 years of his medical practice in Wilmette, probably treating a number of people on this call and certainly people you know. I worked with Dr. Fox in helping to relocate Illinois Bone and Joint from Wilmette Avenue over to Green Bay Road. And that way they have a site on Green Bay Road, and now we have Sophia's Steak in their old site. In short, Dr. Fox is well versed in the ways of our village. I should add that my first job in a law firm was 37 years ago. After my father passed away, Mr. Fox gave me a job that summer. So, but for Dr. Fox's father, I might not even be here tonight before you. So I owe that to Mr. Fox, or Dr. Fox's father. I know you've all had a chance to read the staff report and my 2 letters to the commission addressing the standards of review. So I'm not going to go over that. My thanks go out to John Adler and Jeff Stein for preparing the materials for this meeting. As the report states, and as you just heard from Mr. Adler, there are 2 issues before you. First, whether to grant the annexation petition to permit portions of 56 Indian Hill Road and 39 Locust Road to be incorporated into the village. And second, after annexation, whether to permit the rezoning of the northern portion of 56 Indian Hill Road from R to R1C. What I'd like to emphasize to the members of the Plan Commission is there is simply no request this evening to subdivide any property. That issue has been withdrawn, and my letter to that effect is in your packet. The only issues are annexation and rezoning. To the extent the Plan Commission is urged to speculate about those issues, I simply remind you that they are not before the Commission this evening. To paraphrase Chairman Bradford in a recent annexation case, 2019-P-1, tonight's application is a, quote, very straightforward case, end quote. And as the minutes for that case stated, quote, the other commissioners agreed. That case involving properties at 70 and 77 Indian Hill Road. The southern portions of those lots were in Wilmette, and the owner sought to annex the northern portions of each lot into Wilmette. There were no letters of opposition, there were no lawyers involved, and the proceedings probably took less than 5 minutes because there was no one speaking on that matter. There were 4 members of the Plan Commission who were at the meeting last night, and they all unanimously approved the request. I would ask that you all follow that precedent and unanimously approve this request. The minutes further stated that Chairman Bradford asked the Commission whether they had asked Mr. Adler if the Commission had to go through the annexation criteria, and Mr. Adler responded that if the Commission agreed with staff's assessment, the agreement could be put on the record. The staff assessment focused on the 5 standards of Policy 2, Chapter 3, Land Use of the Comprehensive Plan. Now, I addressed those in my letter, but I believe the staff assessment in the prior case involving 70 and 77 Indian Hill Road is equally applicable here. And let me read you that staff assessment from case 2019-P-01, 70 to 77. And the 5 standards that were addressed in that assessment are also found at the top of page 5 of your packet for this matter today. And I'll just go through 1 through 5 because they're very quick, they're very concise, and I believe they're equally applicable today. So for number 1, the staff's response was, given that the southern portion of the subject properties are already located within the village of Wilmette, the proposed annexation makes sense boundary-wise. For number 2, the staff response was, given that the southern portion of the subject properties are already located in the village of Wilmette, the proposed annexation area is already an integral part of the community. For number 3, the staff response was, no changes to the utilities and services are proposed within the annexation. As for number 4, staff response was, while the Indian Hill Golf Course development does not conform to the village's subdivision regulations, Because the southern portion of the subject properties are already in the Village of Wilmette, the annexation of the northern portion of the property will not negatively impact compatibility of the annexation area with Wilmette's codes. Finally, with point 5, given that the staff's response was, given that the southern portions of the subject property are already located within the Village of Wilmette, the annexation will have no impact on the application of village land use regulations. The amendment, in fact, will remove any future questions regarding which jurisdiction, Wilmette or the county, regulation should apply to the work. In tonight's case, Dr. Fox makes precisely the same request for both 56 Indian Hill Road and 39 Locust. The southern portion of each lot is in Wilmette, and the northern portion is in unincorporated Cook County. The exact same situation that this commission granted the petition to annex in the 7077 Indian Hill Road case. To do so in this case, literally down the road from the prior annexation last year, would fly in the face of your own recent precedent. Now, the decision to annex is in the sole discretion of the village, not the applicant, not the neighbors, and certainly not the residents of Winnetka. The Plan Commission should grant a petition to annex in keeping with its precedent, especially precedent from literally down the road. Now, once the Plan Commission approves the annexation, as Mr. Adler pointed out, the rezoning issue can be addressed. As Mr. Adler said, under the village code, once a property is annexed, it becomes part of the R single-family district. Dr. Fox's request is to rezone the northern portion of 56 Indian Hill Road because the southern portion of 56 Indian Hill Road is also zoned R1C, and therefore request that the northern portion be zoned the same way as the southern portion so that zoning on this lot is consistent. This is not an example of spot zoning. The R1 zoning is consistent with the zoning district along Kenilworth Ave, Grant Avenue, Middlebury, Cleveland, and Dartmouth. In fact, page 2 of the staff report for tonight's meeting states, to the southeast and west of 56 Indian Hill Road are properties sited in the Village of Wilmette and zoned R1C, single-family residence, improved with single-family homes. Moreover, the lot at 56 Indian Hill does not meet the requirements for R zoning. Certainly, rezoning of the northern portion of the lot to be consistent with the southern part of the lot, to create a conforming lot and to be consistent with the zoning in the adjoining Wilmette neighborhood is plain common sense. So in closing, on behalf of Dr. Fox, who's here with us this evening, we ask that you vote in favor of the requested annexation and then the requested rezoning. Thank you in advance for your consideration, and Dr. Fox and I are available to answer any questions you may have.
Do the commissioners have any questions of Mr. Canay or Dr. Fox?
I do.
Please proceed.
What is it that you can't do today that this annexation and rezoning would allow you to do?
To do anything on the northern portion of the property would be something that would have to be dealt with by Cook County rather than the Village of Wilmette. Dr. Fox would prefer to have the properties in Wilmette and deal with the Village of Wilmette rather than two different jurisdictions, Cook County and Wilmette. And candidly, I think it would be better to make local decisions here rather than in the county building downtown.
Okay. So, I understand the subdivision piece was removed, and I understand the rationale for what you just told me. But what I don't see here is an opportunity for us to implement policy number 5 of policy 2, which is whether the annexation will assure sound development of the annexed area, because you haven't presented any proposal for what that development would look like. So we're at the point of decision where, as you acknowledged, it's a discretionary decision whether to annex the property to the village. And we can't I can't certainly exercise that discretion, make that decision in the abstract. And without, particularly where there are concerns raised about the impact of future development. So I have a real problem with being asked to exercise that discretion in the abstract.
I have a question.
Chris, I'm sorry.
I understand the zoning rationale that Mr. Canning just described. I'm not understanding what the motivation is as it relates to the larger property. I mean, obviously, it's an unusual situation to have the village boundary run through the middle of the house. But why now? You've lived there a long time, or the property's been owned for a long time. What's the motivation to follow? And kind of tracking with Maria's question is, why now?
Dr. Fox, you want to take that?
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to respond. Our goal here is to reorient our driveway at 56 Indian Hill to the northwest. And that would involve that 56 Indian Hill acquire a very small portion of 39 Locust in order to affect that change. I had been advised by the village that to carry that out, it would be much easier if we were acquiring Wilmette property to Wilmette property. I believe that the commission and many of the neighbors are concerned on the development side of 39 Locust, and I'm sure we'll touch on that later. But as far as 56 Indian Hill goes, annexation of the north unincorporated portion, a small sliver that controls Indian Hill Road. The purpose of that is to reformat our driveway to provide better ingress, egress, a bit more privacy. And as I mentioned to village representatives recently, this is a very dangerous traffic situation. The Indian Hill Road in front of our home is curving, and the roadway is, I think, only about 16 or 17 feet wide, so that two cars cannot pass by one another without one stopping or pulling over and stopping and allow the other to pass. And I believe that's an untenable situation and a dangerous one. I had asked that if we reformat our driveway, we would lay it out in such a way that there would be a shoulder on our driveway that motorists could use so that they can pass by one another. We also would like to put a small eyebrow, if you will, directly north of our front door to provide another small shoulder. The far west end of Indian Hill Road is too narrow, too dangerous, too curvy. Those of you who are familiar with the neighborhood know that it's very difficult for two regular sized cars, much less two trucks, to enter and exit Indian Hill at Locust Road simultaneously. And while I'm not going to be able to solve that problem, I think we can relieve some of the vehicular traffic risk by reformatting our driveway.
And if you've been out to the neighborhood, you know there is no curb, there is no gutter, there is no sidewalk. And since the beginning of the pandemic, I think Dr. Fox and other neighbors will talk about the great influx of people who have been using Indian Hill Road for leisure or exercise. So when the doctor talks about a dangerous condition, it's not only for his family, but it's for other motorists and pedestrians in that area, because 56 and 39 are right on that bend where the road goes east-west and then turns and goes northwest. So, I think Dr. Fox has explained, what his intent is with respect to the rezoning and how we'll improve the safety in that area.
So my question to follow up on that then is, why don't we have the whole plan? I mean, I don't have a problem with the idea. It sounds like it makes, just as an idea, it makes sense. But why aren't we seeing the proposed site layout, even if there's multiple steps involved? It just seems like I can understand why the neighbors might be concerned, because it just, as I was reading it, it seems like there's a change that it's not clear what's trying to be done, and what the specifics of the modifications that you're describing. It might be clearer if we could see what they looked like.
As the purpose of tonight's meeting is to address the annexation, not subdivision, we will provide plenty of information and planning once we reach the next step. And I just want to assure the members of the commission that there is no fast one trying to be pulled here. I've had the opportunity to read all the letters that were submitted on this topic to the village, and I think there is a lot of misinformation and even some disinformation. 39 Locust Road, as all the neighbors know, was listed for sale years ago and sat on the market for nearly 2 years. The house that occupies 39 Locust right now was, the market told us that it was non-salvageable. If it were, somebody would have bought it. My wife and I, who lived at 56 for only 2 years now, wanted to create better ingress and egress to our home, provide a little bit of more privacy, and hopefully solve some of the safety issues as well. I'm troubled frankly, by the misinformation that's out there. I exchanged emails with one of our neighbors earlier this year, and since February have not been contacted by anyone in the neighborhood. And frankly, I don't know where the information is coming from. I've been told it's procedurally the first thing we do is annexation, and nothing can be done. Nothing can be done with my driveway or anything at 39 Locust without taking the next procedural steps. I just want to reassure everyone that this is no fast deal that's being pulled on people. Chris mentioned a little bit of my bio. We have lived in the Indian Hill area for 32 years. For 30 years, we lived at 44 Indian Hill Road on the north side on the golf course. I had the pleasure to serve as president of the North Indian Hill Road Association for over 20 years. I also had the opportunity to serve as chairman of the Forestry Commission for the village of Winnetka about 15 or 20 years ago. So I am, over the years, I got to learn a little bit about how neighborhoods run and a little bit about trees and forestry practice. So notwithstanding some of the comments and inferences in the neighbors' mail, I'm completely committed to protecting this neighborhood. The reason we bought the property was to get a little bit different driveway format and to protect 39 Locust Road from overdevelopment. And it pains me really to hear these kind of allegations that are being circulated about what I'm going to do and how I'm going to line my pockets and how I'm doing this all in an underhanded fashion. So I can assure everyone here and those who are listening that any changes that take place to 56 Indian Hill Road will go through the normal process at the village. I would much rather do this with the village of Winnetka than have to do it both with the village and the county, as Chris mentioned before.
And Commissioner Head, I think to answer your question, if annexation is not approved and if rezoning is not approved, then anything that would be done to the driveway would then go through the county. So in terms of putting forth a plan, the logical steps are annexation, rezoning, then submit the new driveway plan for the village for their approval. Because we then will have, other issues to consider, such as the front yard of 56 Indian Hill will then be deemed on Grant Street. So it may not intuitively seem that way to you, but that is how we would determine the front yard. Is that correct, Mr. Adler?
And as it stands today, the front yard is Grant also, because Indian Hill is a private street, and if you have a lot that is on a public street and a private street, the public street would be the street in which the front yard would be considered.
So Commissioner Head, so we've got to work our way through these issues before we get to those issues.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a way to, Dr. Fox just, mentioned his intention is a way to memorialize that? Because I think the concern is post annexation, there could be two conforming lots on 56 Indian Hill that would just be like the one we just did on Greenwood that was simple. Is there a way to memorialize that and make people comfortable? Again,
certainly. To John's point, if we were to split 56 Indian Hill Road into two lots, which is ludicrous from a financial standpoint, but it would create one lot in Wilmette without access to a dedicated Wilmette street.
Is that true, John?
I haven't laid it out, but there is, I believe, enough width that you could probably divide it east-west, not north-south. You can't do it north-south because you would be have one street with the only access being off of, or one lot with the only access being off of Indian Hill. But if you divided it east-west, I think you're probably able to get the 50-foot lot width and the 6,000 square feet. So to Mr. Shepard's question about memorializing, this is an annexation. An annexation could have an annexation agreement, and there could be an agreement to not allow the subdivision of that particular property in the the future if that's something that the applicant agrees to. The applicant has to agree to it. That said about the dividing of 56 Indian Hill, doesn't make a lot of sense given the roadway easement and other things. But is it technically possible? Probably.
But in the real world, probably unlikely.
Well, but just to, I apologize, Commissioner Shepherd, if you have more questions, but I guess that kind of brings me back to where I'm, feeling unsettled, is that it's not really so much about Indian Hill, but it's Locust Road and the property on Locust Road. And if the purpose of the application is to allow you to reconfigure the driveway for the Indian Hill property, and to the extent you require, I'm still not clear as to how that implicates the Locust Road property, if you need a piece of that or what the situation is there. But it seems like this is the application before us seeking to annex the piece related to 56 Indian Hill and the piece related to Locust Road has broader implications and maybe more of an intensive application than is required. Is it possible to narrowly tailor the request tonight to address the driveway objective that you have? Or if there's a broader objective afoot, then I think we need to understand the full implications of that.
But my understanding is that the driveway discussion is for 56 Indian Hill Road, not 39 Locust Road. And the request for rezoning is only for 56 Indian Hill Road. It's not for 39 Locust. Is that correct?
So is it possible for you to bifurcate the application? And I mean, I guess if we were to approve the annexation for 56 Indian Hill and the rezoning, that seems to accomplish your driveway objective. And I'm still not clear as to how the 39 Locust Road request is related to that or necessary to accomplish that objective.
John, can you throw the map up again?
Sorry about that. One second. I do not know why it's not coming up there. So hold on one second.
I do agree, if I may say, I do agree with Maria. If we can split up the two properties, the 39 and 56, and deal with them separately, I think it would simplify the issue. I'm also have the same problem looking at, the annexation of 39. I mean, what is being requested for annexation is larger than the initial property, and that's where I can see why the residents in the neighborhood would have issues. So if we can split these two up and look at them,
And John, before you respond, I do see that Mr. Herman has a question, and we will get an opportunity for our guests to speak and ask questions after we've finished asking questions of the applicant.
Can you see that now?
Yep.
Sorry. I apologize if there was a question. I did not hear it. I was trying to find the map.
Well, there was an indication that there was a hand up with a question. So.
Oh, got it.
All right. Dr. Fox, can you point out where the driveway for 56 Indian Hill is?
I think I would have to do that. I
Why
don't,
Yeah,
can everybody see my cursor?
Yes.
Yes,
And in order
Here's the
to,
boundary to Wilmette. Here's the driveway on this curve.
and in order to improve that driveway, some portion of 39, so John, if you could go across that diagonal line there,
Are
keep
you-
going.
yes,
That way?
Over in that area is where the expansion would have to be. So Dr. Fox, it's your position that you've purchased 39 and now 56 is going to purchase some part of 39 so that you can improve the driveway situation. And that improvement would then be something that would be approved by the village of Wilmette. If the annexation of 39 and 56 did not go through, then any driveway expansion would have to be by both the county and the village.
correct.
So just if I could sort of repeat it back to you to make sure, can you leave that map up actually, if you wouldn't mind? It sounds like the driveway needs part of 39. And so the purpose of the request would be to annex the northern piece of 39 so that you could then combine whatever piece you need from 39 with 56 to allow you to do the driveway.
We would acquire a small sliver adjacent to that diagonal,
Yeah.
running to
Just
the
kind of move that
northeast.
diagonal over maybe a little bit or
Yeah,
something like that.
exactly.
Do you own both properties today?
I do.
And the other issue is when this plan would have to take into effect, a plan would have to be proposed, it would have to be provided to staff. Staff would have to determine whether it meets the zoning requirements or whether there would need to be a variation for lot coverage or impervious surface coverage. So all those issues are down the road. And so how much of 39 needs to be acquired will be driven somewhat by those calculations performed by the village.
If I could, and this is going to Ms. DeGrino's question, you know, there was a subdivision request on this property, and I think that the question's been asked and is for at least one member of the Plan Commission to feel comfortable and take action on this, they have to understand what the goal is on 39 Locust subdivision wise. And I think we completely understand now what the goal is as it relates to 56 Indian Hill and the use of the 39, the corner of 39 Locust. You did have a subdivision application in, which was withdrawn, so you could come in at this time with the annexation and the map amendment. I don't know if that application that you submitted that you withdrew is the application that you think you may come back for approval if the annexation's granted, but I think that would help answer Ms. DeGrino's question, unless I'm wrong about that.
Well, I guess I think I don't understand why you couldn't figure out however much of 39 you need for the driveway, plat that and seek whatever approvals. And again, it's a sort of taking a narrowly tailored approach, seeking the approvals necessary for that, which would entail annexation of the 56 Indian Hill piece and annexation of whatever piece of 39 you need to move that diagonal line. I guess maybe a question for John, or I don't know if Jeff is on the line as well, but you know, if they were to do something like that, because he owns both properties, is a subdivision necessary to affect that transfer from sort of one line to the other, because he's the owner of adjacent properties, so it would be exempt under the Plat Act.
Yeah, we would have to take a look at that, but you're right. It might not be necessary. You know, fairly recently, we've been given some concepts on how the driveway would be put out onto or straightened. But what, as Mr. Canning mentioned, we have to take a look at it and make sure that if it doesn't conform zoning wise, we need to let the applicant know that. We need to let Dr. Fox know that. But I think you're right. It probably wouldn't be necessary as long as, and obviously it's not the case. 39 Locust was isn't being made non-conforming because of the taking of the property or the change in the property boundaries.
It's so enormous. I can't. I guess
there's a lot of property that would have to be taken before it would be non-conforming.
Do other members of the commission have questions? Okay, at this time, would like to ask those present this evening wishing to speak either for or against the application. Mr. Adler, I'm not certain how you can control who has the order in which people speak, but I'll leave that up to you. I see there are a number of people.
Yeah. I don't know if Mr. Callahan wants to speak first. I think as far as the commission is concerned, I think you would be happy in whatever order. I do know that Mr. Callahan was representing a number of neighbors. We know that there's a number of neighbors that want to speak that might not be represented by Mr. Callahan.
Right.
And I have no preference in terms of order of speaking, as long as everyone has a chance to speak. The only thing I would ask, in the interest of not having this go until 11 o'clock, is if somebody has expressed your opinion previously, please don't repeat the same information over.
Sure.
We do have two people, Matthew Herman and Charles Callahan, who have their hands up.
So why don't we start with Mr. Callahan?
Okay. Okay. I guess I'm on. So I'm Jerry Callahan. I'm with the law firm of O'Donnell Callahan, and we represent 5 property owners that surround this property. The names of my clients are set forth in the letter that I provided to the Plan Commission, which is dated November 12th. The letter is in your packet. It was included in what John Adler sent to us. We also provided some photographs of flooding in the area that I think are relevant to this evening. So the neighbors that I represent object to the proposed annexation and rezoning for several reasons. First, and I think it's reflected in some of the questions that have arisen this evening already. Development in accordance with the annexation, and I'm not talking about one that may be proposed tonight, but one that could be in the future if this annexation and zoning is approved. Development in accordance with the annexation and rezoning would completely change the character of the surrounding area. As you know, to the north, you've got Indian Hill community. To the west, you have west of Locust, you have other large lots. These are all on parcels that are zoned R3 in the county, where the minimum lot size is 40,000 square feet. Currently, the subject property has 2 homes, one on 39 Locust, one on 56 Indian Hill. By my calculation, and it might be wrong, you'd have to do the geometrics and everything, but it looks like you could get at least 6 homes on those parcels under the requested annexation and rezoning. So we have to look out for the future, even if there's not a current proposal. And that's one of the concerns we have, is that we don't really know what would happen in the future. And that is a major concern. So the increased density would not be consistent with the character of the surrounding area. And once the property is annexed and zoned, there's nothing that the village can do to stop development of the property if it meets all the bulk standards of the zoning ordinance. You have to approve a subdivision. That's a ministerial function, not a discretionary function. Annexation is discretionary, but subdivision is not. So that's really the concern of the neighbors. They don't know what's coming. The other thing I would mention is that if you look at, and I mentioned this in the letter, there is a transitional zoning that the village has in place between the Indian Hill community and Wilmette, and it's R zoning. But in this area, for some reason, it's R1C, which is, like about 3 times more density than your R zoning. So that is another concern, that this area is really treated differently than others and really for no apparent reason. Also, as I mentioned, the area suffers from serious flooding. We showed you the photographs. I think those were forwarded to you as well. There are 2 houses now. If there are 6 in the future, there's going to be more impervious surface. There are going to be more impacts on flooding and drainage. I mentioned in the letter a 2017 study that the village was part of that analyzed an MWRD interceptor that joins the village's collection system only a couple of blocks to the east of here. And I think the interceptor actually goes under the golf course. And in that report, it said that the design capacity for the interceptor was supposed to provide 50 years of protection from basement backups in the area. But in practice, it's only provided 3 years of protection. And one of the reasons given was stormwater infiltration into the interceptor. So again, we're looking at stormwater issues. One of the photographs showed the flooding on Indian Hill Road. This area just doesn't drain well, and this development in accordance with what's requested would not help the situation and would make it worse. The other thing that will happen with the construction of more homes and additional flooding in the area is that mature trees are going to be affected. You could see the photographs, those trees are surrounded by water. That was on I think that was on 39 Locust, yes. And, but there are trees on neighboring properties that if flooding is increased, those neighboring properties are going to be affected as well, and they could lose trees. So that's another concern of property owners in the area. So if you look at the added density, the change in the character of the area, the additional flooding, the neighbors believe that that's going to reduce their property values. And I think that's kind of common sense, that if you have negative impacts, it's not going to help your property values. The proposed annexation and rezoning is also contrary to policies in the village's comprehensive plan. I've addressed those in my letter. Matt Herman, who's going to speak next, is going to talk about the comprehensive plan a little bit. So I'll let my letter speak for itself. I'm not going to go into that. But finally, I think the real concern here is we don't know what the plans are. And I know Dr. Fox said, well, I'll come in and then we'll deal with the issues. That's the problem. Once you're in, you're in. Once you have your zoning, you have your zoning. Generally, a municipality will not annex property unless they know what is the plan, what's going to happen here, what are the limitations, what will you agree to? And that's why annexation agreements exist. A lot of municipalities will not annex a property without annexation agreements. They last 20 years. They can specify what can and cannot be done. They can put limitations on the property. They can deal with things like architecture of the development, landscaping, how many lots, and all of those types of things. How's the property going to be laid out? We don't know. So that is a real concern. And even if Dr. Fox has no plans to do anything else, he could sell this property. There's nothing to say that the property is going to remain in his hands, at which point it could, a developer could buy it and say, I'm taking the houses down and this is what I want to do because I'm entitled. I can come in with a subdivision plat. As long as I meet all of your bulk standards, I can develop this property however I want. So One of the things that I think is worth considering is that this property has been in this configuration for a long time. The house at 39 Locust is 69 years old. The house at 56 Indian Hill is 63 years old. They're both over 60 years old and have existed in this condition for a while. So I would suggest that until there is a plan, a specific plan for this property, that you shouldn't annex the property. That's the typical way that annexations are handled. And the rezoning, and by the way, there was a comment that 39 Locust is not being rezoned. Yes, it is. Right now, it's zoned for 40,000 square foot lots. The property is, I think, about 45,000 square feet today. Well, what's the zoning classification that you're automatically placed in when you annex property? R, that's 15,000 square foot lots. That's so but for 46 square feet, you could have 3 lots on this property. There's enough territory to do that. So those are the concerns of the neighbors. They don't know what's coming down the road. And if you grant this, you're granting whoever owns this property in the future the right to come in, and then you have no control. You have power to control what happens on this property if you wait to see what the specific plan is. But if you don't, you're pretty much giving up any leverage that you have in terms of what this property is going to look like in the future. So in conclusion, on behalf of my clients, we object to the proposed annexation and rezoning, and we ask that you recommend denial to the village board. And with that, I will close my remarks. Thank you.
Mr. Herman?
Yes. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, thank you for unmuting.
Okay. So, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us tonight. I do have some remarks prepared, but I do think the thrust of the committee's questions were really kind of getting at what we fear the underlying motivation of this is. As Jerry Callahan mentioned, the north part of 39 Locust, that the committee was having a hard time figuring out, why does that need to be annexed? Why does that need to be annexed? Is R3 zoning for the county. If it is annexed, the largest zoning that exists in Wilmette, for 40,000 square foot zoning, the largest zoning that exists in Wilmette is R. The applicant applied earlier this year to subdivide that property, withdrew that application. Now he's annexing it so that it goes from 40,000 square foot lots to 15,000 square foot lots. Now, you went around in several circles asking questions, why 39, why 39, why 39? And he said, it's because I really want to improve the driveway or the traffic safety. But if you just think about it in terms of common sense, did he pay more than $1 million for 39 Locust Road in order to, because of some benevolent concern about wider streets? Did he do it in order to improve his driveway? That's awfully expensive to improve one's driveway. Anyways, because that question came up again and again, I think that was kind of something that may have been misunderstood and frankly was kind of glossed over by the applicant. So I wanted to put that out there at this time. Now I'll kind of go to my prepared remarks. So as I said, my name is Matt Herman. Thank you very much for your time at this hearing. Nearly all the nearby property owners from more than a dozen concerned families are strenuously opposed to this proposed annexation rezoning, but we thought it to be the best use of your time to hear our concerns from one neighbor rather than have you listen to somewhat similar comments over and over again from a lot of different people. I will be brief.
And we appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. When I first heard about the prior proposed zoning changes to 39 Locust Road that were withdrawn and have been replaced by the more recent proposed annexation and rezoning, which the annexation seems to be somewhat of a backdoor rezoning, especially at 39 Locust. It seemed aggressive to me, but to be honest, my natural instinct in these types of things is to ignore them. I'm pretty laid back and I like to mind my own business generally, When I took a closer look at the request being made, I was struck by how objectively aggressive and unfair the request was, not based on my feelings or my neighbor's feelings, but based on the criteria laid out in the Village of Wilmette's very own comprehensive plan. In the majority of the cases where the criteria are applicable, proposal for rezoning and annexation, not for land use, the proposal we are discussing clearly violates the Village of Wilmette's comprehensive plan's guidelines. Here's just one of roughly a dozen examples, which happens to be a pretty pertinent example to what we're talking about tonight. A criterion for annexation is, quote, are existing village zoning and subdivision regulations compatible with existing development pattern of the annexed area? No, they are not. Specifically, with regard to 39 Locust Road, the unincorporated portion is currently zoned R3, 40,000 square foot minimum lots, which is consistent with the surrounding development pattern. If annexed, the Village of Wilmette's largest zoning classification, R, allows for 15,000 square foot minimum lots. 40,000 square feet and 15,000 square feet are not the same. Zoning regulations are not compatible. To argue otherwise would be equivalent to arguing that a football field with 37.5 yards between the end zones was compatible with 100-yard football fields. We have similar concerns about the proposed rezonings from R to R1C within the Village of Wilmette, but we do think we do fear that the true motivation of the annexation request for 39, that the committee can't figure out, why is this part of this? What does this have to do with the driveway? What does this have to do with the driveway? It's a backdoor way to subdivide 39 Locust. I have limited time here, but this is just one of the many, many examples of how objectively in violation of the Wilmette's own comprehensive plan this proposal is. I'm not a lawyer, I've never been an attorney, I've never been to law school, but I can read. Overall, the proposed annexation or rezoning would lead to a potential threefold increase in housing density in the affected area, from 2 houses to 6. And the commission, once the annexation and rezoning is approved, as Jerry Callahan said, there's nothing you could do to stop it. This would drastically change the character of the neighborhood. Further, the area surrounding the property in question has experienced severe flooding problems with standing water in yards, and on the street, it can literally be measured in feet. We have pictures from this year. The storm sewers are often overwhelmed. If the requested annexation rezoning is approved, the village will be green lighting an aggressive threefold increase in density in the area with no recourse to prevent it in the future. The last thing this area needs is increased development and more impervious surfaces. The village is aware of these problems and has participated in a study of the ineffective interceptors serving this area that Jerry Callahan mentioned. It appears that Dr. Fox has hired Mr. Canning to attempt to influence this process and to carefully cherry pick the minority of the village's land use criteria that are plausibly not violated by this egregious request, while ignoring the majority of the criteria that in regards to rezoning and annexation specifically, which is what they're asking for, that it clearly just does violate. Please do not let one person steamroll virtually all of his neighbors in your own comprehensive plan by giving them what is essentially a blank check to develop this area in damaging ways that you would have no control of in the future. In closing, the reason my wife and I purchased our home here 5 years ago to raise our son and daughter is because we love the neighborhood. We naturally assumed that the neighborhood would look similar 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later. That's obviously a major consideration for people when they buy a home. I don't get alarmed by much, but I do find it sincerely alarming that such an aggressive and unfair request that is clearly in violation of the municipality's own guidelines could potentially move forward without very much detail, without any adequate description of their plans. Supposedly this is all about improving a driveway. An unfair request that is clearly in violation, or to move forward and change the character of our neighborhood and exacerbate already significant flooding problems, not only diminishing the value of our property, but diminishing the experience that we have in our home. Please do not approve this aggressive and unfair proposal that will make my family and more than a dozen of my neighbors' families regret having chosen to live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herman. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak for or against the application? Hearing none, this portion of the public comments is closed.
Chairman Bradford,
Yes,
if, just to make sure that we don't have anybody on YouTube Live that provided comments, Ms. Roberts?
Thank you. There were no comments on YouTube.
Thank you.
okay. Then this portion of the public comments is closed.
Chairman Bradford,
Yes, sir.
I believe Dr. Fox wanted to say something, but he's on mute.
Dr. Fox, if you would unmute
Yes.
yourself, please.
Sorry. Procedurally, Chairman, are we dealing just with the annexation of 56 Indian Hill, or tonight are we dealing with the annexation of 39 Locust Road as well?
Well, currently the application is for both the annexation of both properties. Now, we have the option of amending the application to split them apart, and we could vote on those separately.
Well, I think for the sake of brevity, and this issue has been pushed forward over 8 months now, primarily because of COVID. We also granted the neighbor's previous attorney a continuation of the March 3rd meeting, and then 2 weeks later we were in lockdown. So I think all parties involved here would like to see some type of resolution here. The elephant in the room here, and perhaps Mr. Callahan could help us on this, is a deed restriction that exists on 39 Locust. I believe Mr. Callahan referenced that in his informational packet. And I was wondering if he would be willing to address that and maybe explain it to the neighbors.
Mr. Callahan?
Yeah, sure. I raised it because it was on a survey that I saw. I don't, I expected that you perhaps would have an answer to that.
Well,
And I think it was your survey. That's the reason we raised it. We didn't make a big argument about it, but we just said, hey, this is shown on the survey. So what is, it probably would take some digging. So
and to Mr. Callahan's point, that's exactly correct. And that is why we asked Chicago Title to endeavor to get into the Cook County Recorder's Office to better understand that. And I can assure you, in the several months that I've been involved, Chicago Title has not been able to accomplish that. So while we see the deed restriction on the survey, and while we may have the underlying documents, we also may not have the underlying documents. That is what Chicago Title was tasked with finding, and to date, they have not responded that they've been able to accomplish that. In talking with some other lawyers and real estate professionals, getting access to the Cook County Recorder of Deeds office has been very difficult since the beginning of the quarantine. Is that your understanding, Mr. Callahan?
Yeah, I mean, and again, because we brought it to the attention of the Plan Commission because it's right there on the survey. So, I mean, perhaps the way to address it is to ask, is the owner willing to limit 39 Locust to one home?
As the situation stands right now, and Chris mentioned that we're trying to do our due diligence on this, but as things stand right now, there is a deed restriction on 39 Locust that would limit any future development to one residence, not four.
Okay.
One. Does everyone understand that?
Yeah, but I don't know if it's really a valid and effective deed restriction. If
Right.
it is, and that's really, I think, what Mr. Canning and I are talking about, that it's kind of, it's an open issue. If you were willing to place a new restriction on that property, that might solve the problem, because then all the neighbors would know
Well,
that on,
no, it doesn't solve the problem with 56 Indian Hill that we're allegedly going to split into two properties, does it?
yeah, I think if, you know, if you could show us something where you need a little sliver for a driveway and 39 Locust can only have one house on it, that would fill in some of the blanks that we raised tonight about what, you know, what's the future of this property.
I think it would fill in all the blanks, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And the property, 39 Locust is, I think, 64,000 square feet, far larger than any of the other properties on Locust. And our original plan was to subdivide 39 Locust into two properties, not four, two. One on roughly an acre, or 44,000 square feet on the north, and then the smaller 1/2 acre lot to the south. When we were apprised of the deed restriction, obviously, we're not going to subdivide a property that can't be subdivided. And the application for subdivision was withdrawn. So I think the attorneys all agree that it would be really helpful to see what's on that deed restriction. It was filed in 1926, and if it is still in force, there's only one house that's going up. If it's not in force, does somebody have a question?
Yeah, Mr. Herman, I see you waving your hands.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of whether the deed restriction is in force or not, which nobody seems to know, deed restrictions expire, and annexing the 40,000 square foot zone area of 39 Locust to Wilmette would make it, at some point, maybe now, if that deed restriction has expired, maybe sometime in the future when it does expire,
Unless another deed restriction were placed.
I think if that goes to the heart of, I think if Mr. Fox were willing to talk to all of his neighbors and lay out a specific plan for what's going on here and put on effective restrictions that were legally binding, I don't think anyone has a problem with him improving his driveway or making the road safer. I just don't think, based on the pattern of events, the request for subdivision and then what seems to appear to be a backdoor request for a subdivision by annexing this area to a place that has lots that are a third the size. But basically, like I said, we want to be good neighbors. I don't want to stick my nose into anybody's business, but it doesn't seem like they're being very forthcoming about their plans. If they were forthcoming about a plan and there were the appropriate protections in there, I think this would be a very short hearing, and we would all agree, and there'd be no argument here. But they tried to subdivide the property, and now they're trying to essentially backdoor subdivide it by getting it annexed. That, you know, they may know the deed restriction is faulty. They may know it expires soon. Maybe nobody knows, but at some point it will. If they were willing to put in a deed restriction with a significant duration and a significant, time and force behind it, I think a lot of the neighbors would feel a lot differently about this.
Here's my understanding of the issues before us. We really have two issues that I have heard. One is the desire on the applicant to improve driveway access to his property at 56 Indian Hill Road. And to do this, he needs to acquire a small portion of property from 39 Locust Road. The portion of 39 Locust Road in question, I believe, Mr. Adler, from looking at your map, is part of unincorporated Cook County, is it not?
Correct.
Okay. The other issue that I'm hearing this evening is a concern by the neighbors in terms of the future of 39 Locust Road in terms of potential subdivision. And even if we were to bifurcate the case this evening to approve annexation for 56 Indian Hill Road and not 39 Locust Road, at some point we would have to come back again and annex the sliver of acquired property from 39 Locust Road to the village to allow Mr. Fox to do his driveway addition. Is that a fair characterization?
Yes.
Okay. You know, we can proceed with the agreement of the applicant to bifurcate the cases and vote to annex the two properties separately, and then vote on the the zoning change for 56. But I guess it would be the chair's preference that Dr. Fox, excuse me, Doctor, go ahead and proceed with acquiring and making the transfer of the property from 39 to 56, and then coming back with a revised case. So at that point, we're annexing all of the property that is now part of 56 and voting on both the annexation and the rezoning. And I would like to entertain comments from other commissioners.
I think that's a good approach, Commissioner.
I agree. If that would make sense to right now.
Other commissioners' comments?
Yeah.
Would the deed restrictions have any effect?
Well, I'm focusing on trying to get Dr. Fox his driveway correction. And I think if we sort of put 39 Locust aside and I won't say kick it down the road, but that doesn't appear to be the immediate concern.
No, I understand, but to take that sliver, if there is a deed restriction on that property.
But from what I'm hearing this evening, and I can't because I haven't seen the deed restriction. And as Mr. Herman said, I'm not an attorney. If it is in fact a deed restriction for only developing it as a single family residence, the size of the lot does not necessarily dictate that.
Okay. And
I think that's Dr. Fox's concern and not the board's, the commission's concern. Is if he makes the acquisition, he's doing it at his risk that he has that he could get title insured over the restriction.
And I might add, with respect to the deed restriction, again, that's a private agreement, which the village is not a party to it. So, that would be something that the village would be standing on the sidelines, and Dr. Fox and whoever can enforce the deed restriction, they would be dealing with that at a future date.
Yeah, if I could just sort of buttress that, I agree, we're not a party to that. It's nonetheless relevant information to have in evaluating the request as it relates to 39 Locust Road. So I would certainly be interested in understanding it. But I completely agree with Jeff. I mean, if I had to guess what it says, shifting the line to allow driveways, probably okay, but it's a risk that Dr. Fox has to take.
Comments from other commissioners? All right.
Excuse me, this is Jerry Callahan. If I could just make one comment.
Yes, Mr. Callahan.
If there is going to be a shifting to accommodate the driveway, the parcels, including the unincorporated and the incorporated parcels of 56 Indian Hill, total 14,871 square feet. if you pick up a few hundred square feet for the driveway, that could be zoned R instead of R1C. And that would be more comforting, I think, to the neighbors to know that there could be one house in there, because Mr. Adler mentioned that, you know, he could envision a way that you could divide this property to turn it into 2 lots. And I'm not saying that's what Dr. Fox is planning, but again, looking to the future.
If I could just interject, what I would recommend if that's the concern is to do it through the annexation agreement.
Okay.
The issue when you go to R is you've got much larger front yards, much larger rear yards. This is
Got it.
already a challenge site. And then the other part of it is in the R zone, you're allowed a house 35 feet in height. In the R1C, it's 30 feet in height.
Okay.
And so again, if that's the concern and the applicant, Dr. Fox, is okay with it, I would recommend in the annexation agreement there be a limit to 1 lot.
Got it.
So I think we've got several options. One is we could call the question on the motion before, or call, move to have the application as submitted voted on and call the question. We can amend the application, or we can continue. And Dr. Fox and Mr. Canning, I'd like to get your opinion as far as how you'd like to proceed.
Well, let me start out with, was one of your considerations to table 39 and proceed with 56?
That is one option, correct.
Okay, because I don't believe under the statute we're allowed to even withdraw an annexation petition. That has to go forward under any means, but tabling might be one option.
Okay. And Mr. Adler, do you care to weigh in?
I would recommend, given everything we heard tonight, that if the applicant agrees, is to table it. At this point, I would probably do to not a date certain, because there's things we need to look at. The most important thing for Dr. Fox is making sure that the property in which he would be taking from 39 Locust works with the driveway that he's proposing. He's got an unusual lot there, which is very challenged in that the house was designed as it fronts Indian Hill, but zoning wise, the Grant Street is the front yard. And so there's already zoning issues that he's dealing with. And we want to make sure that if he's going to go to this, to the extent of transferring property and annexing in, that we're confident that he's going to be able to do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And I'd like to reinforce that point, because to undertake this plan without annexation shouldn't be a futile gesture. So the plan that will be worked on with staff will have to assume annexation of 56 and the appropriate portion of 39.
And Mr. Canning is absolutely correct, because all of the engineering planning, if it still is a portion of Cook County, the whole review and approval process is completely different, as if we're with the village. So in my mind, it makes perfect sense to have it go through the local authority having jurisdiction as opposed to Cook County.
Well, which has always been our intent.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Herman.
I can't speak for everybody, but I, don't think that I'd make one stink whatsoever about him, taking 300 square feet or 400 square feet or whatever it is he needs from 39 Locust Road to, accomplish what he wants to accomplish with his driveway.
Thank you. And any other comments before I close the public comment section? Hearing none, we're going to make several motions here. First of all, I'd like to entertain a motion to split case 2020P-01 into 2 cases, one for the annexation of property at 6 Indian Hill Road, and the second one into property located at 39 Locust Road. Is there a motion to split?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Adler, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. DeGrino,
Yes.
Ms. Gamey,
Yes.
Mr. Head,
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Chairman Bradford.
The chair votes aye. The motion has carried. The next motion I'd like to have made is to continue the case for 39 Locust Road to a plan in the future to be determined. Is there a second? Or make a motion, please. Sorry.
Make a motion. I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Adler, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. DeGrino,
Yes.
Ms. Gamey,
Yes.
Mr. Head,
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Chairman Bradford.
The chair votes aye. The case for the annexation case for 39 Locust Road is continued to a date to be determined in the future. I'd now like to make a motion to approve the annexation of 56 Indian Hill Road. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Adler, would you call the roll, please?
So this is the actual approval of the annexation
Annexation of 56 Indian Hill Road.
as shown. Okay.
Yes.
Ms. DeGrino,
Yes.
Ms. Gamey,
Yes.
Mr. Head,
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Chairman Bradford.
The chair votes aye. That's an affirmative recommendation. Again, this goes to the village board on December 8th. Representation may want to be there just in case there are any questions. Now I'd like to entertain a motion to split the, well, let me back up a little bit. I'd like to entertain a motion for the rezoning of the proposed annex portion of 56 Indian Hill Road from R1 into R1C. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Adler, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. DeGrino,
Yes.
Ms. Gamey,
Yes.
Mr. Head,
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Chairman Bradford.
Chair votes aye. Again, that's an affirmative recommendation that will be heard by the village board on December 8th. Is there any other business in terms of these two cases, Mr. Adler?
There is not.
Okay. I do want to circle back on the, and I'm struggling with my notes here. With the first case we heard on Greenwood, there was a second action that we needed to take.
Oh.
Which was authorizing the chair to approve the minutes of the meeting.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for remembering that. If we could get a motion to that effect.
And this will allow the staff to send me the meeting minutes to review and approve in time to go to the village board on December 8th, prior to whatever our next meeting is. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Adler, call the roll, please.
Ms. DeGrino,
Yes.
Ms. Gamey,
Yes.
Mr. Head,
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Chairman Bradford.
Chair votes aye. So that has been approved. I'd like to thank Mr. Canning, Mr. Callahan, Mr. Herman for spending your evening with us. I think it's been a very beneficial discussion, and I think we've got at least a good way forward on this. Mr. Canning, good to see you again. We used to spend a lot of time together.
Yes, we did.
Chairman Bradford, if we could have the same motion for the preparation of the report that we did for 21, that you went back and did for 2133 to do it for 56 Indian Hill.
Okay. And for both motions or separate motions?
I think we could, for the preparation of the rezoning and of the annexation, I think we could lump it in as one.
Just lump it all together?
Yeah.
Okay. A motion to permit the chairman to review the meeting minutes for the 56 Indian Hill Road case.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those, Mr. Adler, call the roll.
Mr. Greeno,
Yes.
Ms. Gamey,
Yes.
Mr. Head,
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Chairman Bradford.
The chair votes aye. So thank you. The motion has carried. So Mr. Canning, Mr. Callahan, Mr. Herman, again, thank you for joining us. We've got a couple of other things to cover this evening before we adjourn our meeting. You're welcome to stay and listen, but I don't want to bore you. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
good
Thanks
night,
for
all.
your consideration.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Adler, you want to talk about the comprehensive plan update?
Yes, as you, I'm sure recall at the last meeting, we talked about preparation of the request for proposal. Received some really good input from the commission. I know there was a discussion about including things like social equity and into the RFP, which wasn't included in the sort of the scopes that staff presented at the last meeting. In addition, Chairman Bradford mentioned where he works that the request for proposals typically contain a diversity, a participation for the consultant. And so what you have before you is a draft of the project objective and scope of services that try to take those items into consideration. Ms. Gamey mentioned what other communities have done. This draft pulls from a number of different communities, both in looking at comprehensive plans, but also looking at requests for proposals. It also attempted to be pretty flexible because, as we talked about, the consultant is going to be, whoever we hire is going to come in with a lot of experience, more experience than any of us have. Maybe Ms. DeGrino has worked on as many comprehensive plans on the law side as some of our consultants, but so we're going to expect them to provide input into the scope of the project. So I guess I would ask for comments on it. Obviously, this isn't the whole RFP, but the sections that we're looking for the Plan Commission to provide input.
Okay.
Hey, John.
Yes.
What's the expected timeline on it? Like when?
Well, you know, if we don't get done with your comments on the RFP tonight, we will meet on December 1st to talk again about it. If you do get through your comments, then I'm supposed to give an update to the village board at their meeting next Tuesday about the process. If you get through it, I would let them know you've been through it. Next, share it with the village board members. And then obviously we have to complete the RFP. This is just certain portions of it.
Yeah.
The idea would be then beginning of 2021 to start the consultant selection process.
Mhm.
And then probably kick off the project in earnest in spring, summer of 2021. So that's the schedule, and we're predicting it'll take two years at least. So we're predicting that if we started in spring of 2021, we're looking at spring of 2023 to fall of 2023 for finishing the document and adopt and the village board actually adopting it.
That's helpful. Thank you.
John, Mr. Adler, can you remind us of what the budget is for the consultant?
The budget is $175,000. That's the budget. I think one of the things we're probably going to have to do in the RFP is, especially those sub area plans, we're probably going to have to ask them to bid those separately, because I don't know if the budget will allow 3 sub area plans and updating of the master plan, the village center master plan, and then everything else that needs to be done. But that is the budget.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that, John, you may want to prioritize the sub areas.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Yeah.
And John, quite honestly, I scanned through it this evening prior to our meeting, but I haven't gone through it in great detail. I will. One recommendation I would have is, if you can, try to develop a structure for the RFP response, so that there's more of a consistent format for the information you're getting back. So it'll make it easier for you to compare, apples to apples, because otherwise it's going to be all over the map in terms of the information you're getting back.
Yes.
And Homa, I think, you going through the same process with making, qualifications submittals, you understand completely on that.
Right. But Mr. Adler, you said this is basically almost like a concept that you're going to come up with specific criteria, specific questions to ask, correct?
Yeah, I mean, what we're going to have to do is, as Chairman Bradford mentioned, is to have that structure, the response be structured in a way that we could compare it. I think we're, as I mentioned the last time we discussed this, and I don't know what the consultant vetting process is going to be. I would imagine if it's not the Plan Commission, it would at least involve the chair of the Plan Commission. But we haven't discussed that yet with the village board, and so we don't know exactly what that process is. But yes, there will be a lot of work that will need to be done in reviewing the proposals that come in, and make sure that we get whatever questions or concerns we have answered.
Well, will we be able to, will this committee, the commission, be able to see the draft of the RFP so we can comment? And
what you have before you is what we're looking for input on. This is what this is the draft we're looking for input on.
Okay.
And again, we could meet on December 1st and talk about it more. But I obviously what's in the RFP is important. And we want your input. So, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, and you're not ready to comment what's in the document you've been given, that's fine. Again, we have because of pushing our meeting till November 17th, we do have the ability to meet on March 1st and talk about it more, where you have more time than just over the weekend to look at this document.
Okay. I'll take a look at this tomorrow and get comments back to you, John.
Yeah, and if you've got you know, what we could do is with the comments you get me, create a new draft, which I'll try to get out prior to the Friday before the meeting for you. But yeah, I completely understand that, you know, having a weekend to take a look at it, and that's one reason why again we've looked at December 1st, if you're all available, having our normal meeting on December 1st and talking about this further. Good.
I'll throw out one quick question now.
Yeah.
If this is okay. Do you see a wide variation in how consultants will come back with how to approach the Village Center master plan in regards to this project? It says revisit as needed. People can take that.
I mean, we tried to be a little bit more specific in there and indicate what, you know, the reason we're asking the question, and reason it was really twofold. One, we've had development that's been built and we have a project that's going to be underway, and with that knowledge, we want to make sure we still feel comfortable with the character that these projects are creating. So I think that's fairly specific. How a developer comes in, how a consultant comes in and answers that question, you know, is probably going to depend on the consultant. But also one of the things that we would like them to look at, the east side, as I mentioned, we've gone through the tentative process to get an honorific designation for a National Historic District, which I think is great for the east side of our village center. Not all of it, but most of it. And having some sort of recognition in the master plan about that, because as you may or may not know, the zoning for some of our more historic buildings on the east side is similar to what the zoning allows on the Imperial Motor side, and with height and such. And again, that's something we want to take a look at. I will mention something else to that end. The Land Use Committee is going to be looking at an amendment to the village, the way the PUDs are looked at in the village center, to make a certain height or a certain size development, have it required to go through the PUD process. So it's a way to to recognize that there's probably some lots where the 52-foot height limit or the 64-foot height limits that we have may not make sense, and again require that they go through the PUD process if they're going to seek to do that. It hasn't gone to the Land Use Committee yet. They're actually going also on December 1st. They're going at that meeting's at 2:00. So, you know, we're able to have the Plan Commission meeting later that day.
Okay.
But so we've recognized that, and we're looking at doing an amendment that will help us keep things in the village center, any sort of development that comes during the timeline of us reviewing the comprehensive plan, to be confident that we're going to be able to review it and make sure that it's in keeping with the area of the village center that it's going in.
So this sounds good.
Great. We don't have to have, there's no action we have to take. Just
No,
meet
this is more
again.
informational.
Yeah. Does 5 o'clock, is that still a time that works good for you on December 1st?
I can make that work, yes.
Great. Yeah, so what I would ask is, if you want to take an attempt to mark it up or comment, feel free to do that. I'm guessing there's at least probably three members of the Plan Commission who have done a lot more RFPs than staff, or have been involved in responding to a lot more RFPs. So your expertise in it would be truly welcome.
Mr. Adler, did you send an electronic file of this?
No, but I will. Yeah, you just have a PDF, but I'll send you the Word file.
Great, thank you.
Okay. And I will attempt in my limited technological abilities to mark that up.
Yes, but I will send you the Microsoft Word will hopefully make it a little bit easier.
Where is it? I'm looking for it. This is my technology.
I love it. You're such an architect.
Yeah, yeah. I still miss my tracing paper and pens.
Yes, yes.
And I've become such an administrator and bureaucrat these days. I don't get to draw anymore.
That's awesome.
So if I could jump in, I look forward to discussing further on the first, but my initial reaction was that, we talk about the existing chapters and components in terms of geographic area, commercial areas. And I wonder if we should be thinking more in terms of the outcomes that we want to promote around that, and any other topics as well, but in particular with respect to commercial areas, talking about it in terms of economic vitality, as opposed to thinking about, here are the commercial areas that we have, what do we do with them? Kind of thinking more comprehensively about what's changed, what are our goals and objectives, what are the resources that we have available to us, and how can we make the village, how can we promote economic vitality within the village, which could be looked at kind of differently with respect to commercial areas or services or other aspects. I think it's a more holistic way of looking at it.
Yeah, no, I
think that's a nice one point.
Yeah. I mean, there is a paragraph that attempts to get to some of that, but not to that extent. And yeah, any input or you can provide on that, that would be great. I would appreciate it.
Okay, Mr. Adler, anything else we need to cover on the master plan?
Nope.
Any other business to come before us?
No, except I think we at least have to ask if there's any public comment on items that
Yeah. I still see we have one guest on here.
Yep, a couple of guests.
Yeah, anybody else care to comment? Guests who are on and may take themselves off mute and make comments. Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Mr. Adler, call the roll, please.
This is a record of roll calls, by the way.
Yeah.
Vote calls. Ms. DeGrino,
Yes.
Ms. Gamey,
Yes.
Mr. Head.
Yes, and can I just note that I was driving three kids home from baseball practice during that series, the flurry of votes, and they all got a kick out.
That's dangerous. Okay.